Today we're going to be making my grandmother's cornbread. I'm going to show you guys how to do that. And whenever I was newly married at a very young age, I didn't know how to cook anything. And so I visited her house and she taught me over several days. We prepared meals together. And ever since I've been a teenager, a young teen, newly married, this is how I've been making my cornbread. So you'll need some Martha White self-rising cornmeal mix. Has to be Martha White brand. I use the Great Value all-purpose flour, just some whole milk, buttermilk, just some oil, regular vegetable oil, and baking soda. And so I'll get started with that. So the first thing I'm going to do is put about a cup of the cornmeal mix in a bowl, and I have my skillet here, and I've preheated my oven to 500 degrees, so we're going to cook it at 500 degrees. And so the skillet, this is my cast iron skillet that I got from my grandmother. This may even be the one that she actually gave me whenever I started cooking, and it may be one that I just inherited from her, but I just kind of measure with my heart. Pour in some oil. If I had to guess, it's probably about 3 tablespoons, I would say. And we want to coat it around the edge here. Make sure you get your edges coated really good. And then this excess that I have, I'm going to pour into my cornmeal mix here. Okay. And then wipe off my edge. And then I'm going to take some of this cornmeal mix and I'm going to dust my cast iron skillet really good. And this keeps it from sticking. Sometimes it sticks. I want to get the middle really good. I've been re-seasoning this one, so I want to make sure I get it really good. Try to get the edges. Okay. All right, so the next step is we're going to take our all-purpose flour, and I just kind of measure with heart. I just take one of the large tablespoons and get a heaping tablespoon of the flour and put it in. If I had to guess, I'd probably say 2 tablespoons if you were measuring. That just kind of adds the fluffiness, I guess. The next thing I have is baking soda. You want to use a pinch of baking soda, and literally I reach into the box and get a pinch and put it in. That is gonna, the purpose of that is to cut the bitterness of the buttermilk, the kind of the tartness of the buttermilk. Take your buttermilk, and then we're gonna use our same measuring cup here, and I would say about 2/3 maybe of buttermilk, and we're gonna pour that in, and I'm going to add some water as needed. I know that it is gonna take some water, so I'll just kind of fill this up and just add it as needed. So I'm going to pour some in there and stir. And the consistency I want is not really soupy, but I definitely don't want it dry. I want it pourable. So kind of like a pancake batter, I guess you'd say. So I just kind of stir until I reach my desired consistency. That's a little too thick. So I'm going to add a little bit more water. And I'll just keep adding water until I reach what I want it to be. I think it could use a little bit more water. And then that's always going to usually change on how much water I add, because depending on if I have my kids here or if I have several different sizes of cast iron skillets. I usually always use a cup of cornmeal mix, give or take, but depending on how much cornmeal mix that I have, that's kind of how much liquid I'm going to need. So that looks about right. And so I'm just going to pour this into my skillet. My prepared skillet. And I know some people, they put their skillet in the oven so that it's hot before they cook their cornbread, and I don't typically do that. I have done that before, but I've not really noticed that that makes a difference. So just make sure I get all that out there. And then I want to level it off. Make sure it's level the way I want it. And then we're just going to stick it in the oven at 500 degrees. I'm going to set my timer for about 21 minutes. So there it is. And usually it goes between 20 and 22 minutes. So when the timer goes off at 21 minutes, we'll check it and see if it's the color that I like, a golden brown on the top, and we'll go from there. All right, so the timer went off. It's been 21 minutes. So I'm gonna check this cornbread here and see if it's the color that I like. Let's see. All right, so it's the perfect color. All right, so we want that golden brown color, and I'm gonna flip it over onto the plate. This plate was my grandmother's. She passed away a couple of years ago and actually inherited her actual cornbread plate. So I use this every time. So just kind of flip it over onto your plate. It should just dump right out. I take mine and put it up on the side of the plate so that it can cool off. And as it cools, it's going to create a moisture underneath, and I don't want that moisture to get on the bottom of my bread from my plate and get my cornbread soggy. So I'll let it sit this way for about 5 minutes while it's cooling, and then after it's cool, I'll push it to the center, and then we'll cut it and we'll see how it tastes. Okay, I do think it's important to point out that your skillet, you don't wash your skillet with anything but water, and I do wash my skillet whenever it's hot. And so when I finish with my cornbread, I do come over here and get some hot water, and I do rinse my skillet. I do not put anything on my skillet at all. If I have anything that's stuck, I do use this scraper to get any pieces that may have stuck on it. And I just rinse it with water. And then I just take my dish rag and dry it out. And that's exactly how it looks whenever I get started. And so sometimes I'll store it in the oven if there's nothing in the oven. And that's what I'm gonna do today. So we're about ready to cut our cornbread. So let's go ahead and do that. And you can see the moisture that was on the side of the plate. So we definitely don't want to get that on our cornbread. That was the whole purpose of making sure that it stayed up on its side while it cooled. All right, so let's go ahead and take a cut here. You can hear that nice crisp. Everybody in my family loves the crispy cornbread. So let's take a taste. It's just like Granny's cornbread.